A round of applause and welcome to the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast.
Thank you, and thank you, Pastor Mario, my dear friend. You guys made it. You flew in from Florida this morning, right? Thank God you're here. So Yair, it's an honor to be speaking with you, and you have in this room a room full of leaders and activists. It's not just a room full of people. These are people who, in their communities, are all at the epicenter of pro-Israel activism everywhere. So really, you deserve a round of applause. Every single one of you who are here. But Yair, our subject today, as we were just listening to Ambassador Friedman and Bill Koenig speak so eloquently about these claims that are made against Israel and our need, as Ambassador Friedman says, enough with apologizing for our right to be there. But I'd like to dig into this topic, this whole topic of these demands for a quote-unquote Palestinian state, for a two-state solution. And it's really so auspicious, Albert, that we're here in New York at a time we didn't even, when you planned this, you didn't know what the UN had in mind. God sets things up this way. It's amazing that we're here at the perfect time. So Yair, just to get deeper into the topic, I know that if you want to take notes, there's going to be a lot of information in this interview. Let's start just with this whole concept of Palestinian and Palestinian state, which we hear so much. Unpack that term for us. Give us the talking points, because the truth is, if these Palestinians do have national rights to the land, then maybe we are in the wrong. We're not. But educate us about this whole concept of Palestinian nationality.
Thank you, Rebbe. Thank you, Pastor Mario. I just want to start with thank all of you for your support and love to Israel. I think that we have all the people of Israel. We have no better friends than our Christian and Jewish friends in the United States. And really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I think also that America has no better friends than Israel. So it goes both ways. So before we dwell into the current affairs, it's very important to understand the past in order to understand the present. So I think the bottom line when it comes to the history of the conflict is, where does the word Palestine come from? Because the Palestinians, who are Arabs, don't have the letter P in Arabic. They cannot pronounce the name Palestine, so where does it come from? So 2,000 years ago, Israel, the Holy Land, was part of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire was divided into provinces, like you have states today in the United States. So the official name of the land was Province of Judea. You have it in every Roman documents from the time Jesus of Nazareth was born in Province of Judea. And it says in the New Testament that the land that he's living in is in the Roman province of Judea. So contradicting it is contradicting Christianity, because it's in the New Testament. So where does the word Palestine come from? How does the name of the province was changed from Judea to Palestine? So there was the great revolt of the Jews in 70 AD that ended up with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. But 50 years later, around 120 AD, there was another major revolt of the Jews against the Romans called the Bar Kokhba revolt. And the Romans, and especially Emperor Hadrian, was really upset about this rebellion that lasted for several years, and the Jews managed to get even independence for a year or so. So the Romans sent all their legions from Germany, from Britain, and from throughout the Roman Empire to crush the revolt, and of course they managed to. And they killed hundreds of thousands of Jews. They took other hundreds of thousands to slavery, into Italy, into Spain, and other places. But the major punishment for the Jews for their rebellion was to change the name of the province from Province of Judea to Province of Syria, Palestine. And it was in order to humiliate the Jews and disconnect them from their land. But you said, okay, where does the name Palestine come from? So the Romans picked up the name Palestine, naming it after the ancient Philistines that we all remember from the Old Testament. Now, at that point of time, the Philistines were long gone and extinct. About 500 years before that, they were occupied by the Assyrian Empire and sent into exile, together with the 10 tribes of Israel, by the way, and was lost from history. So even at the Roman times, 2,000 years ago, they were already an extinct people. Now we know from archaeological and historical evidence that the Philistines were European Greek people coming mainly from Greece and Crete from around 3,300 years ago at the time of the Bronze Age collapse. And there is graves of Philistine graves from southern coast of Israel and Gaza showing that their DNA is European, Southern European, and their name in Hebrew means invaders. We don't even know how they named themselves, because all we know about them in writings is from the Jewish text. And the Jews called them invaders, because the Jews were the native people, the Semitic people of the land, that they came from the sea, from Europe. So the Romans named it in order to humiliate the Jews, because they knew that according to Jewish history, they are the ancient nemesis of the Jewish people. So everything from the Roman Empire was stuck into Europe, became part of the European tradition and knowledge, like the letters we write in ABC, it's Latin alphabet and the month of the year and everything else, and even architecture like the White House and the symbol of the United States, the eagles spread with the wings. It's all coming from Roman heritage. So in European documents, the name Palestine stuck, but it had no national or cultural meaning. It was just a geographical area, like you would call Mesoamerica, with Central America. It had no Arabic or Islamic connotation. It was long before Islam was even born. Now, even after the Bor Kokhba at 120 AD, the Jews remained the majority of the land and a substantial part of the local population. It's only in the 7th century AD, after Islam was born in the Arabian Peninsula, and the expansion of the Muslim empire and colonialism from the Arabian Peninsula and occupying big chunks of the Middle East, the Arab occupiers did something that the Romans and the Byzantines didn't do before them, which was to take away the agricultural lands of the Jews. And at that time, in ancient times, most people were farmers, and they had to have a land in order to cultivate it and to feed themselves. So once they did it, this was the last straw that caused major Jewish immigration outside of the Holy Land and into Europe and other places. So a lot of people will say, okay, but that was in the 7th century. If the Palestinians and the Arabs had a state ever since, so that's a long time. You cannot go back to the 7th century. But the truth is that even after that, the Arabs and there was never a distinct Arab Muslim country in the Holy Land. It was then part of a vast Arab empire that spread from Spain to Persia. Never its own, just a small, never its own even province, just a small part of the big, larger Muslim empire. And then it switched hands with the Crusaders and with the Turks, and back and forth, Muslim and Christian and Crusader, but it was never its own state since the state of the Jews that had at the ancient Roman times, and until modern times of the rebirth of the state of Israel. And when the Brits took over the land in the aftermath of World War I, I'm fast forwarding 2,000 years, they named, and the League of Nations and the British Empire named the land British Mandate of Palestine after the ancient Roman name of the land, without any Arab or Muslim connotation, because the Palestine Post, which was a Zionist newspaper, for example, Jewish Zionist newspaper that today is named Jerusalem Post. The Jews, the only people that called themselves Palestinians back then were the Jews. My grandmother had a Palestinian British passport because it didn't have any Arab or Muslim connotation. The Arab population of the land mostly referred to themselves as other Southern Syrians or just part of the larger Arab nation. So it's about, like, I try to put in a nutshell 2,000
Wow.
years of history.
Well, that's a lot of information, Yair. I'm fond of, here's something you can keep in your back pocket if you're ever having this argument with someone and they claim that there's a Palestinian nation, a Palestinian history. Just say to them, please name me one person from history from before the 20th century, a leader, a religious leader, a political leader, a king, whatever you want to call it. Name me one person who was the leader of the Palestinian people from any time in history. Don't wait around for an answer, because there won't be one. But it's a great way to very simply make the point that there's no such thing, there's no such national history. And as you just pointed out, until really the 1950s, until the forming the State of Israel, really, but the Arabs of the area did not like the term Palestine and insisted on referring to themselves as Southern Syrians, as you just pointed out. It's very important to note this. So let's move from the historical aspect, and you already bled into it a little bit. Let's talk about the legal issues, because that's something that comes up a lot. And just before, Ambassador Friedman and Bill Koenig just both mentioned the San Remo agreement, but it wasn't really well explained. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who are not sure what that means, but this is a critical piece of the puzzle. So when people talk about that Palestinians have rights to the land, or that Israel's an occupier, they're using terms that have legal connotations. Can you clear this mess up for us as well?
Okay, thank you. So, the legal status of the land for 400 years, the land was part of the Turkish Ottoman Empire, if we fast forward to modern times. And it wasn't even its own province. It was part of the Syrian province with its capital in Damascus. So it wasn't even a province within the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Now, in World War I, the British Empire invaded from Egypt and took over the land from the Turkish Empire. In the aftermath of World War I, the winning powers, which was Italy, Russia, Japan, the United States, the UK, France, etc., convened in San Remo in Italy to divide the new territories of Europe and the Middle East. And it was agreed that the Turkish, it was now the Republic of Turkey, will give its rights, its legal rights to the land to the British Empire. So the Turkish country officially gave up its right to the land to the British Empire. So now, according to the legal status of the land, it's belonged to the British Empire. And the British accepted the control of the land not as a colony, but rather as a mandate, which was a new term that was invented in the aftermath of World War I, which basically means that the French or British Empire gained control of a certain territory, but only temporarily, in order to prepare the local natives to gain independence in the future. And in each mandate, it was written who are the native population that's supposed to inherit the land and have their own country. So the British Empire received the mandate of Palestine from the League of Nations, and in the mandate it was said that the Jewish people are the natives of the land that's supposed to gain independence in the future. In the British mandate of Palestine, in all of the British mandate of Palestine, that basically is today's Israel, Judea and Samaria, West Bank, Gaza, and even the current Kingdom of Jordan. So that was the legal status of the land. And the British mandate of Palestine was ratified later on in the American Congress, becoming part of American law, in the British Parliament, becoming part of British law. And when the UN was created, it automatically adapted all the charters of the mandates of the League of Nations, becoming part of the UN law as well. So it's actually the fact that Israel is has the legal claim on Judea and Samaria and Israel is part of American law, British law, and the UN Charter. So that's something that not a lot of people think. And then people say, okay, but it must have changed since. So yes, well, the British mandate was still enforced. The British toward 70 changed their mind and decided that it has to be a two-state solution. Therefore, they decided that everything east to the Jordan River will be the Arab state. the Arab Muslim state. So that's already 70% of the land. And this is the current day Kingdom of Jordan. So there was already a two-state solution split for, 70% to the Arab Muslims and 30% to the Jewish people. When Israel was declared in 1948, after the British Army left the land, 7 Arab armies invaded Israel, the newborn Israel. And what they managed to occupy, the Jordanian army, was what they call the West Bank, because they're coming from the east bank of the Jordan River. So what they occupied in the West Bank and the Egyptian army in Gaza was actually an Egyptian and Jordanian occupation. In the aftermath of the War of Independence of 1948, Israel approached Jordan and approached Egypt to make this new line, which is called the Green Line, which was only a temporary ceasefire line, which is not binding according to international law. It just means that in this line, hostilities end. But it has no political meaning or any sort of legal meaning of any sort. And Israel actually approached Jordan and Egypt to make it the new border. And Egypt and Jordan are the ones that refused to make the Green Line, that is what now divides Israel from the West Bank and Gaza, as an official international border because they refused to recognize Israel as a legitimate state. So it was never an international border. It was part of Jordanian occupation that no country in the world, I think, except for Pakistan recognized, and Egyptian occupation of Gaza. And when there was the war of 1967, when Israel was again attacked in order to annihilate it, Israel regained its control over this land, which it owns according to international law anyway. So again, going back to history.
That is the clearest and most detailed answer I've ever heard to that question, I have to say. And I do this for a living, talking about Israel. It's so important to make these points, to know these points. And even if you don't remember every detail, just remember that when someone uses the term occupied territories, they're actually saying something. This isn't just an expression. They're actually saying something that is legally incorrect. You can only be an occupying power. Like if the United States invades Mexico and takes over part of Mexico, they're occupying it. It's someone else's sovereign territory. Because there is no other state that ever existed or exists that lays any claim to that territory, it is not occupied. Technically, this is just it's actually false. You can say to someone, if they call it occupied territory, that's actually legally incorrect. Even if you want to have the argument about Palestinian rights, that is incorrect. It's not occupied territory. Very well done. So we talked about the historical aspects and the legal aspect